This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Episode 339 for January 7th, 2019. Welcome, I'm your guest host this episode, Amy Brennan. I'm an associate editor at Cast of Wonders. This means I get to read all the submissions that get sent to us, and help choose the ones that really shine, in what is always a strong field of wonderful fiction. It's a perfect match for me, as I'm an avid fan of fiction in all its forms, including writing. My first ever professionally published piece will be forthcoming soon from Cast of Wonders, as I was one of the winners of the recent Flash Fiction contest. I'm so excited! I also enjoy art, listening to music, and anything that involves crafting. I live in Cambridgeshire with two cheeky bunnies, Clover and Bramble. They troll my partner's cuddle beast of a cat, Percy, because they know he's scared of them, bless him. Every year in January, Cast of Wonders highlights some of our favourite episodes from the previous year. It's a great chance for us to take a bit of a breather and let you, our listeners, catch up on any missed back episodes with new commentary from a different member of the crew. My staff pick for 2018 is The Penelope Qindom by Aidan Mower, which originally aired as episode 321 on September 16th. Aidan Mower is the Hugo Award-winning founder of A Dribble of Ink, author of On the Phone with Goblins and The Dinosaur Graveyard, and a regular contributor to Tor.com and Barnes & Noble SFNF blog. He lives on Vancouver Island with his wife and kids, but you can most easily find him on Twitter at A Dribble of Ink or his website. The Penelope Qindom is narrated by Andrew K. Ho. Andrew K. Ho teaches and practices Choi Li Fut Kung Fu and Tai Chi in Southern California, where he also writes speculative young adult fiction. He has been a high school English teacher, an assistant language teacher in Japan, and a college professor. His academic work in children's literature can be found in The Looking Glass. Follow him online or on Twitter. And now we've a tale to tell.
The Penelope Qindom by Aidan Mower. Narrated by Andrew K. Ho. It was during the particularly frozen solid Prince George winter of '91, a few days after the new neighbors had arrived, that I first stumbled into the Penelope Qindom. "What are their names?" I asked my moms as they bustled about the kitchen getting ready. They'd invited themselves next door for a welcome to the neighborhood dinner. We'd never had new neighbors before. "Mr. and Mrs. Quing?" said Mama Kate. "They have a daughter. She's 11 too, so you'll probably be in the same class after Christmas break." "You'd better be nice to her," Mama Betty muttered as she dug around the fridge. "And I think it's more like Shing than Quing." Mama Kate made a face and stuck out her tongue. The oven timer dinged. Mama Kate took the lasagna out and put it on the counter. Mama Betty appeared from the fridge with a bottle of wine. "Can you grab this, Ivan?" Mama Kate said, gesturing at the pasta. "Can't let it cool." Without waiting for my answer, she disappeared toward the front of the house to get our winter boots and jackets. Mama Betty followed her with the wine. I wrapped the lasagna in a tea towel, met them at the mudroom, and we left the house. The neighbor's front door swung open before I could ring the doorbell. A girl with rumpled black hair greeted us. She wore jeans and a knit sweater decorated with the USS Enterprise, NCC 1701, naturally. "Hello," she said, her voice like dappled sunlight. There was a moment of awkward silence. "What do you say to a new neighbor?" My Mama Kate made her classic lasagna." Not my finest first impression. "I see that," she said. Her grin was challenging and endearing all at once. I wasn't used to such complexity in a smile. The girl's mother came to the door, martini in hand. "Hello, Mrs." said Mama Betty, trailing off to avoid an indelicate pronunciation. "Mrs. King, with a Q," she added with a flourish, the way she'd probably said it 1,000,000 times before. "But please, call me Kathy, with a C." Her tight blonde curls bounced as she winked with her whole face. "Why with a Q?" I asked. Mama Betty smacked me lightly across the back of the head. "Don't ask things like that," she said. "Hello, dear," Mama Kate said to the girl before Mrs. King could reply. She had an oddly irritating smile on her face. "What's your name?" "Penelope," said Penelope. "Well, invite them in," called a man's voice from deeper in the house. It wasn't quite teasing, but almost. Their home wasn't much bigger than ours, but where my mom's kept things spotless, chaos reigned in the King household. Respectable, understandable chaos. Boxes stacked high in the hallways, furniture covered with old sheets, and walls half painted, the detritus of an upheaved life, but chaos all the same. I loved it. "Why don't you show Ivan the basement while we share a cocktail with his parents, Penelope?" Mrs. King said, as soon as the front door shut. Penelope's face broke into a mischievous smile. She grabbed my hand and pulled me through a nearby darkened doorway and down a stairway. "It's different in Chinese," she said, stopping mid-flight. Only a sliver of light reached us through the door above, so I could barely see her face as she turned to look at me. I was suddenly aware of my hand gripped firmly in hers. It wasn't like holding my mom's hand. Not quite sure what she meant, I said nothing. "My last name. It's pronounced differently in Chinese. That's why it starts with a Q." "How do you say it?" "I don't know. I don't speak Chinese." "What about your dad?" "He hasn't spoken it since he was a kid." I tried to imagine not speaking the same language as my parents. "I guess King is just easier for people here to pronounce." She shrugged. "Come on!" I followed Penelope as she bounded down the stairs 2 at a time. At the bottom she flicked on a light. "Welcome," she said, waving her hand to encompass the land's entirety, "to the Penelope Kingdom." I was not prepared for the vast world of knights and castles and dragons that awaited us at the bottom of the stairs, filling every nook and cranny of the basement. Made of styrofoam hills and paper trees, wooden houses, Lego castles, and plastic figurines, the Penelope Kingdom was a thing of dreams. I'd lived whole summers in the sand pile behind my house, digging ditches and building cities that dissolved in the lightest rain. Those worlds existed in my head, vast places of adventure, unrivaled by anything my childhood world could offer. The Penelope Kingdom was like one of those worlds come to life. "This is where I spend most of my time," Penelope said casually, as if such a world existed in everybody's basement. "Can I show you around?" "Why is it a kingdom?" I asked. Penelope looked at me sideways, her head tilted like a bird. "What do you mean?" "You're a girl. Shouldn't it be Queendom?" Penelope laughed. "Girls can be kings too." "They can?" "Why not?" I didn't have an answer. I liked the idea, actually. "Besides, it works with my name," she said. "Another good point." "So, the Penelope Kingdom," I said. "Exactly." The conversation stopped as Penelope picked up a box full of action figures and dolls from where it hid in a nook under the stairs. "You need to pick one," she said, "so you can enter the kingdom." I dug through the box for a moment, settling on an action figure wearing a black robe and a helmet that looked like a cooking pot. Penelope reached into the box and managed to pick a plastic morning star out of the mess without looking. "A cleric. Good choice. What's his name?" she asked. "Ivan," I said. My cheeks flushed as I bit down on blurting out a more creative name. "Well, Sir Ivan, cleric of the Wending Wind," Penelope said, dropping her voice an octave, "you are now anointed a knight of the Penelope Kingdom." She placed the morning star in the palm of her hand and held it out towards the plastic figurine clutched in my hand. To my surprise, Sir Ivan bowed his head and reached out to take the weapon from Penelope. My stomach heaved, and the cleric dropped from my suddenly clumsy fingers. "Penelope, Ivan, dinner's ready!" Mrs. King's voice rang down the stairwell. Penelope grabbed my hand and dragged me upstairs without an explanation. It is unclear when Sir Ivan, cleric of the Wending Wind, first arrived in the Penelope Kingdom, but his rise to knighthood is well documented. In spring 1237 BF, Ivan Wandsworth, a lowly cleric, was involved in a fight at the Whistling Pig, a watering hole known for its rabble-rousers and bad beer. Local prison records indicate that a brawl erupted after Wandsworth was attacked by a priest of Irenea, who targeted Wandsworth as part of his campaign to, quote, put holes in the unholy, end quote. Sitting ringside for their pious brawl was Ulf Rigerson, a captain of the king's panoply who frequented the tavern in an attempt to retain some semblance of the life he led before being conscripted. Unharmed by the altercation, Wandsworth was escorted to jail by the city guard. Much to his regret, the Irenaean priest was unaware that before life in the clergy, Wandsworth was an indentured and very popular pit fighter in Ulusang. The priest was treated for a compound fracture of his humerus, but later lost his arm to the rot, justifying his belief in God's cruelty. Wandsworth was released the following morning on account of the jailer having prior relations with the Irenaean priest. Impressed by Wandsworth's handy dismantling of the priest, Rigerson approached him as he exited the prison with an invitation to join the king's panoply, an elite military company in direct service to King Penelope. Bereft of coin and dignity, else why would he be drinking at the Whistling Pig, Wandsworth accepted Rigerson's offer. He was subsequently escorted from the prison to the royal castle's small chamber, where he swore allegiance to the king's panoply and the Penelope Kingdom. Excerpt: A Wending History. Si Wu. Terrapin Press, 1344 BF. That's Ulf Rigerson. Penelope pointed to a blonde-haired beefcake who I was certain lived a former life as He-Man. I picked him up, and as soon as he was placed amongst the other living toys, he rattled to life. He's a bit of a jerk, but you want him on your side in the fight. I picked up another figurine, Wonder Woman, dressed in army fatigues from a G.I. Joe and colored with a felt marker to have dark brown skin. And her? Sorry, she's got a lot of kids. Penelope gestured towards a pile of dinosaurs with human doll heads glued between their shoulders. We heard the stomp of Mr. King's heavy black boots on the front steps all the way down in the basement. Every school night we'd keep half an ear open for him. It was the sound of the sun setting on the kingdom. Time for me to go home. Mr. King wasn't bad exactly. He was always polite and drove Penelope and me to swimming on Saturdays. But he didn't really seem to pay attention when you spoke to him. He was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and sometimes it seemed like he cared more about that than anything else. Is it hard having an RCMP officer as a dad? I asked Penelope. Well, she said, furrowing her brow, I guess so. After a pause, she continued, I don't like moving around so much. I don't think he likes me, I blurted out. I hadn't realized I'd felt so until that very moment. The words surprised me as much as they did Penelope. She put down the figure of Wu Shi, a traveling scholar who had first arrived in the realm astride a giant tortoise. His steed clambered across the rocks surrounding the pool at the foot of the Heaven's Reach waterfall and disappeared beneath its turbid surface. A bubble of air formed around Wu Shi's head just before he was submerged. The kingdom settled. In seconds, it was just toys, wooden block buildings, and plastic shrubbery. Penelope's eyes darted between my own and her hands, fidgeting furiously in her lap. My father doesn't approve of your moms, she said, as though breathing the words came at great cost. Well, I said after a moment, forcing a smile onto my lips. My Mama Betty doesn't like the way your dad still hasn't taken the Christmas lights down, so I guess they're even. We both laughed until our cheeks hurt. Mr. King came downstairs to say hello. Even in socks, the sound of his footsteps coming downstairs was unmissable. He walked with authority, always rigid, disciplined, so unlike Penelope and her mom. His scarlet RCMP uniform was imperious. Mr. King watched us laughing like we were half loony, then told Penelope that dinner was almost ready. He showed me to the front door. Ivan Wandsworth faced brutal hazing at the hands of his fellow Panoplians. Then, one night, his toes being nipped by Boggles, Wandsworth's long-sequestered rage, grown strong in the fighting pits, erupted in a fury. He inflicted severe damage on his peers in his escape. 4 cracked skulls, 7 broken legs, 32 snapped fingers, and 2 shattered noses. However, even the feared pit fighter could not hold out against Ulf Rigerson and the half-company of Panoplians roused to detain him. Rigerson was not involved in the hazing, but his fury at being woken by the struggle has since become legend among new Panoplians. Wandsworth was detained in a cell usually reserved for the worst of RCMP's demons. There he rotted for a fortnight. Word of his escapades spread through the ranks of the Panoplians like a begrudging wildfire, eventually making its way out of the garrison, through the royal palace, and to the ears of Queen Penelope herself. A now legendary meeting between the king and Wandsworth occurred in the shadows of his cell, during which she offered the cleric a knighthood if he would be her, quote, greatest weapon against MP, end quote. Wandsworth accepted. Local gossip says that the king quenched Wandsworth's thirst from her own flask. Upon his unorthodox graduation from the panoply, Wandsworth became Sir Ivan and assumed his prominent role as the king's trusted advisor and weapon. He took his title from The Wending Wind, a fairy tale from his youth of a wind-born priest who traveled through myriad lands in search of a song with the power to mend broken hearts. Excerpt, A Wending History, C. Wu, Terrapin Press, 1344 B.F. The next 2 years were a blur of new classmates, homework, endless summer days, and my mom's lectures about the benefits of 4-H and equine therapy. One thing that remained constant, however, was my forever growing affection for Penelope. She had this frenetic enthusiasm that was almost overwhelming. I couldn't help but love what she loved, to sink into the way she described things, to touch objects warmed by her hand. She was brilliant, way above our grade level, but being around her didn't make me feel dumb like being at school. She opened doors to a world where understanding anything was within reach if you thought hard enough and filled in the blanks with your best guesses. Mr. King became openly wary of our friendship, and Penelope told me awkward stories about her mother's attempts to set her up on playdates with other girls. My moms were more open to our friendship, but on more than one occasion, Mama Betty made it clear she wished we'd spend less time burrowed in the basement. For both of us, the transition from elementary school to secondary school had been unfriendly. One day after school, I went to Penelope's like I always did, even though I wanted nothing more than to hide in a hole. She was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs, holding a squirming cave troll, and said, Mom heard from Principal Schmidt. The shadow of Mama Betty's baseball cap covered most of my face. Penelope reached up and removed it. The tenuous light of the basement's lamp spilled across my swollen eye. I looked back at her with such shame. Tell me, she said. The cave troll stilled. I couldn't find the words. She guided me to a chair and sat me down. Tell me what happened, Ivan. Davy, I said, just above a whisper. He asked me which of my moms was the boy, so I kicked him in the nuts. Penelope winced, but then another look came over her as she considered the implications. It was halfway between dread and fascination. A bit of pride threatened my shame. Davy was in 11th grade, but looked like he should be in college. She reached up and ran a finger lightly around the rim of my eye. It hurt, but I was more concerned with hiding my embarrassment. Ivan's a fighter, she said. No, I'm not. Ivan Wandsworth is a fighter. He is, I said, awash in her adoration. I think I broke Davy's nose. Then he got what he deserved. I looked up at her, and she stared solemnly back. Then, to my surprise, she threw a punch, thumping me playfully on the shoulder. Before I could get her back, she tackled me to the floor. Our laughter brought Mr. King stomping down the stairs. He wasn't impressed. I'd always thought a kiss would be wet, messy, but Penelope's mouth and mine was warm and dry, with just the softest touch of her tongue on my lower lip. My hands clenched at my sides, an instinctive reaction to the shiver crawling up my spine. She reached for one of my fists, parted my fingers, and entwined hers around them. I was sure my hair stood on end. Penelope pulled away first, ran a hand through her dark hair, smiled. I fought the urge to lick my lips until she licked her own. I stammered something stupid. She laughed, then kissed me again. The day after the kiss, Penelope left with her parents on an early summer vacation to a Soyuz. Not much fun for a kid, but she used to live there and was excited to see old friends. Mr. King gave me the keys to the house, and Penelope gave me the keys to the kingdom. While King Penelope traveled to a foreign land on a great diplomatic mission, Sir Ivan was in charge. As we stood outside her house, Penelope said, "This is the first time in the history of the kingdom that its safekeeping will be trusted to someone other than—" Her wide-eyed expression was supposed to communicate the seriousness of this historic moment, but I was fixated on her lips, shiny with strawberry lip gloss, and the way her hair fell loosely braided over her shoulder. I yearned to kiss her, but horrific possibilities flitted through my mind. What if her parents saw? What if she didn't reciprocate? What if she did? Then she was gone, whisked away by her mother, seat-belted in the back seat. I watched and waved as their hatchback disappeared around the corner of our sun-soaked street. Mama Betty leaned against our front door and looked at me with a smile that made me want to hug her. As we walked inside together, she ruffled my hair the same way she used to when dropping me off at school. I'd asked her to stop one day, told her she was messing it up. She'd listened. I sort of missed it. The next day I went over to the King's to water the plants. When I was done, I went downstairs to assume my duties as interim ruler of the kingdom. I rounded the corner of the basement stairs, unsure of where to begin. There was no hello from Penelope, no bloodthirsty ogre roar, no proclamations from town criers, no tumbling jesters in the royal court. Just silence. I trailed my fingers down the old silk scarf that formed the Heaven's Reach waterfall. At my touch, everything stirred, like a golem come briefly to life. Two naiads splashed playfully in the spray, goading a water drake hidden behind the curtain of water. The smoothness of the silk reminded me of the brush of her fingertips. The drake parted the falls with its head, nipping at the naiads, who slipped into the pool's depths, laughing. With the memory of her touch, the drake's head dropped, magic losing its grip to gravity. The taste of her mouth filled the void. Startled, I looked around. A pile of old toys filled the basement, littering a hodgepodge kingdom of spare parts, reclaimed household items, and childish dreams. I shuddered for a moment, feeling foolish forever holding on to such a trite belief. The kiss had woken something in me, something huge, and there was no longer room inside me for the Penelope kingdom. I left, and when I was back in my bedroom, I circled the date of Penelope's return on my calendar. I made a promise to myself to kiss her again. I didn't go down to the basement again. Penelope hadn't even been home for half an hour when I showed up at her house to follow through on my vow. She greeted me with a rush of questions about the kingdom, then a barrage of stories about her time away, water skiing, her cousin's new tree fort, the embarrassing evening when her mother drank too much wine. We laughed and I asked questions, but all I could think about was kissing her. She seemed oblivious to my discomfort. She gave me a bottle of wine to pass along to my mom's, then pulled out a tub of stuff that looked like it came straight from a thrift shop. The Penelope Kingdom grows, she said. Her grin made me smile, and without warning, I felt a flush of nostalgia. I shook it off. The things she'd picked up were great, no doubt, but I wanted to get down to business. I hadn't built up all this courage just to let it bleed away while we looked at toys. I got this for Sir Ivan, she said, showing me a plastic dragon. She placed the cleric between its articulated wings as though he were riding a horse. Every great knight needs an equal steed. Pretty cool, I admitted. She arched her eyebrow at my lukewarm response. I could see the living kingdom reflected in her cinnamon eyes. To me, though, it was as lifeless as the day after she'd left on vacation. This is it, I thought to myself. Now! Do it now! I've got something for you, I said. Close your eyes. I didn't think my courage would survive her curious stare. We sat cross-legged across from each other, so I had to lean far forward to reach her. Guessing my intent, Penelope blindly reached for my hands. The surprise was no less sweet for being spoiled. The warmth of her kiss sent courage coursing through me. I opened my eyes. I missed you, she said. She blushed, and I realized that she was equally anxious. I missed you too. I was too earnest. I leaned in and kissed her again. I never got a chance to tell her about the Penelope Kingdom's strange quietude. Historical records tell of many enemies vying for the downfall of the Penelope Kingdom. However, most eminent among them was RCMP, the villainous Chancellor Warlock of Set. Known for his crimson robe and faceless visage, MP was single-minded in his quest for control and otherworldly in his ambitions. From the moment of its founding in 14 BF, the Penelope Kingdom was harried by MP's diabolical schemes and magical warfare. Most of MP's schemes involved attempted magical relocations of the kingdom from this earth to the outer realms, an incomprehensible place of magic where the laws of physics are reversed. In his chronicle of the Penelope Kingdom, A Wending History, Terrapin Press, 1344 BF, Wu Shi speculates that the outer realms were created as the result of an accidental mana confluence following a blood magic ritual in which a young MP attempted to resurrect his father, a treasonous haberdasher who was executed by the great warlock lord Braze Tun. Excerpt, Magics of the Penelope Kingdom, Cant Este, Mana University Press, 1401 BF. Our friendship changed in the weeks that followed. It was strengthened by our newfound affection, but confused by my lingering frustration for it to grow beyond the childish borders of the kingdom. Each time we visited, I left more tired of the imaginary escapades that still excited Penelope. So I made every excuse to change the scenery. Burgers at the pool cafe, movies and popcorn, a camping trip with my parents to Bugle Lake. Mr. King was particularly eager to support our above-ground social activities. At first, Penelope seemed to enjoy these new adventures, but she always came back around to the kingdom. We were in the doldrums of summer vacation, high school waiting like a bully around September's corner, when I found Penelope sitting on the front step of my house. She seemed solemn. Her hands were shaking, and mascara, which she'd just started wearing, ran down her cheeks in twin charcoal tears. "We're moving," she said, eyes downcast. Her words hit like one of RCMP's Ultimo bombs, obliterating all the frustration and resentment I'd bottled up. Moving. I repeated the word slowly, not quite able to grasp its meaning. "To Vancouver." I could tell she was angry about it. So was I. "Why?" I asked. "My father," she said. "Reassigned." "Vancouver's a long way from Prince George," I said. I had driven down there with my mom's once for a wedding, It took us 2 days. I still remember the stream of midnight semi-trucks screaming by our highway-side campground. None of us slept that night. The rush of blood pounding in my ears sounded exactly like those trucks. When? I asked. Just before school starts. We've already got boxes to pack. I remembered the piles of boxes that filled our house when I first met Penelope. Come on, she said, smudging the mascara in an attempt to wipe it away. Let's go downstairs. The last recorded sighting of Sir Ivan, cleric of the Wending Wind, occurred during the red autumn of 1329 BF, preceding the absolute destruction of Sarras village. Sarras was home to the Great Oak, a sentient tree with the curious ability to dampen many nefarious magics. Prominent among the village's residents were Sari the Ever-Hearted and her loyal dragon children. As sole protector of the Great Oak, it was not unusual for Sari to be called upon several times a year to defend the village from attack by the minions of the dreaded warlock RCMP. During the Red Autumn, Sarras faced a direct assault from MP himself. Survival of the Great Oak was paramount whatever the cost, forcing Sari to summon many of the kingdom's most trusted defenders, myself included. Sir Ivan and I arrived in Sarras as battle raged between Sari and MP. With our aid, the tide of battle turned against the warlock, but, never content with a fair fight, he unleashed his most devastating weapon, the Ultimo Bomb. The resulting explosion was so enormous that it consumed the entirety of Sarras, ending the lives of all 154 residents and obliterating the Great Oak. It is said the preparation of an Ultimo Bomb requires the sacrifice of 1,000 innocent souls. When the smoke cleared, a deep crater was all that marked the existence of the once humble village. From that crater crawled Sari, hairless and black with soot, several of her dragon children, and myself. I myself survived only by taking shelter under the mithril rings of a brave dragon child. Neither MP nor Sir Ivan emerged. In the centuries that followed, the village of Sarras was forgotten, but the legend of Sir Ivan lived on. My great friend was memorialized by a monument at the deepest point of MP Crater, carved of black diamond. Sightseers from every corner of the land still visit the site to marvel at the cleric's diamond robes billowing in the noble wind that blows through the crater at noon and midnight each day. Excerpt, A Wending History, Si Wu, Terrapin Press, 1344 BF. On the morning of moving day, Mama Betty found me sulking in front of the television. She asked me what was wrong, as if it wasn't obvious. I shrugged her off and stalked away. She followed me to my bedroom, where I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to focus on reading a comic book. I'm all ears, you know, she said. I knew she was trying to be nice, but nice wasn't what I needed. Nice wasn't enough. I know, I said, more snappish than I'd meant. You'll be all right, Mama Betty settled beside me and put an arm around my waist, like she used to do when we all curled up together on the couch for family movie night. She'll be all right. I imagined the first day of school without Penelope, lost amidst a sea of people that I didn't understand, who didn't understand me. Childhood friends who were now strangers. A sick feeling rose from the pit of my stomach to burn right above my heart. Just fucking sucks, I said, spitting the curse defiantly. I hadn't cried in years, but damn it, those words were forced around a huge lump in my throat. Tears threatened, and I turned away from Mama Betty. It does, honey, she said. It fucking sucks. I won't tell you it doesn't. So, figure out a way to change that. The world's smaller than you think it is. You can phone Penelope as much as you need to. I hated talking on the phone. I leaned my head on Mama Betty's shoulder and let the tears come. I cried until my gut ached. It felt good. At some point, Mama Kate joined us, one hand on my shoulder, the other resting on Mama Betty's knee. I was sniffling away snot, about to apologize for acting childishly, when Mama Kate said, "I think Penelope's packing the car. Why don't you go say goodbye, Ivan?" Through my bedroom window, I could see her dad packing luggage into their nearly full hatchback. A moving truck was also parked out front, two burly men packing it full to bursting. I'd missed my chance to kiss her goodbye when she left on vacation. I wouldn't make that mistake again. "Oh, and Ivan, we'll talk about your language at dinner," Mama Betty called after me as I left my bedroom. I turned. "But you swore too." Mama Kate's raised eyebrow chased me out the door. When I got outside, Penelope was sitting beside a beat-up moving box on the concrete steps in front of her house. Her old house. I waved and she scooted over to make room for me. Her eyes were red-rimmed like mine. Neither of us said anything about crying. The silence was awkward at first. Then it settled into something comfortable. "I have something I want to give to you," Penelope said, finally. She picked up and passed me the box. I lifted the interlocked lid flaps and saw Sir Ivan lying on top of several recognizable characters and landmarks from the Penelope Kingdom. "He's got a new sword," I noticed. I picked up Sir Ivan, manipulated his articulated limbs into a threatening battle pose, then gently put him back in the box. "Penelope, I can't take these. They belong with the kingdom." She retrieved Sir Ivan and put him back in my hand, wrapped my fingers around the hard plastic. "Ivan's not from the kingdom," she said. "He never was. He's served the king well, been a trusted advisor and protector, but she has a new mission for him, the most important in the land's history. The world's big, Ivan. Bigger than the Penelope Kingdom. Bigger than Prince George." "The kingdom is expanding," I said, glancing back at the box of toys. "Let's call it a colony," Penelope said. Then, in the voice of the king, "Sir Ivan Wandsworth, cleric of the Wending Wind, I charge you with the following: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before." I laughed, then assumed character. Under a blanket of solemnity, I rose from the front steps and knelt before Penelope, holding Sir Ivan before me. It might have been a trick of the moment, but his plastic skin felt soft and warm. "I pledge to uphold the vision of the Penelope Kingdom," I said, "to embrace what friends I find outside its borders, and defend every corner of the growing realm from villainy." She took Sir Ivan from my hands and kissed him once on each cheek. "You are a true hero, Sir Ivan." She looked me in the eye as she said this, not as King Penelope, but as Penelope King. This is great, Penelope," I said, back to real-life Ivan. The warmth in Sir Ivan whispered away as I stuffed him in my pocket. "You'll love Vancouver," I said. I didn't know that. It just seemed like the right thing to say. "That's what my dad says." "It'll be weird waking up tomorrow and not coming over here." Penelope's foot started tapping. "Do you have a computer?" she asked, suddenly hopeful. "Yeah. Mama Betty has one for work. She lets me use it if my homework's done." "That's perfect. I learned about a world that we can go to on the computer. Darker Realms. It's a mud." "Like a puddle?" I was confused. "No, like the Penelope Kingdom, but with words instead of toys." How could words come to life in that way? I thought of all the books sitting on the shelves of Penelope's basement and the handwritten stories her mother left scattered atop their kitchen table. "Words?" I said. "Words!" "I don't know if my parents will let me," I said. Deep down, I knew they would. They liked Penelope more than they hated the emerging world of personal computers. "They'll let you," Penelope said. "Tell them I told you about it." A car horn sounded, breaking us from our excitement. Penelope's mother was already buckled in. Her dad beckoned from where he leaned against the car. "It's time, honey," he called. We stood, hugged. Then I kissed her, not even caring that our parents could see. After one final embrace, we parted, our heads entwined until the last possible second. Without a word, Penelope ran to the car and clambered into the back seat. A quick wave from Mr. King, then he got into the car. I couldn't quite tell, but it seemed like he was smiling. They drove away, and I thought for sure the boxes piled high on the roof of their car would tumble off. I wondered which box housed the Penelope Kingdom. They turned the corner, and she was gone. It wasn't the last time I saw Penelope, but it felt like it at that moment. I took the box she'd given me down to my own basement. After relocating my mom's forever-in-progress pile of sewing from the ping-pong table, I turned the box upside down and scattered the toys across the soil of their new home. I spent time arranging everything, trying to come up with something even half as interesting as Penelope's Kingdom. Eventually, Mama Kate's voice drifted down the stairs. "Ivan, lunch!" Plans running through my head, I set Sir Ivan down under the great oak. Finger on the basement light switch, I surveyed my accomplishment from the bottom of the stairs. It would do, I thought. Sir Ivan, cleric of the Wending Wind, knelt outside the dragon's cave. His head was bowed, cowl covering his face, and his jeweled sword lay across his knees. He was several feet from where I just put him down. Sir Ivan drew back the hood of his robe, looked me straight in the eye, then stood and raised the sword triumphantly into the air. He stepped into the darkness of the cave, sword still held high above his head, and kept walking until he was lost in shadows. "Just a minute!" I hollered back up the stairs. I watched the darkness pouring from the cave mouth, and, like the glimmer of Wandsworth's new sword slashing in the shadows, I saw the beginning of another great adventure.
I loved this one from the moment I saw it in the slush pile. It really struck a chord. I've never really been very good at making friends. I'm too shy and introverted, but I had lots of imagination. Before I discovered books, I'd use my toys just as Penelope did, creating my own worlds and stories for the characters in them. I'd occasionally co-opt my brother's Games Workshop figures, and my dad led cast Napoleonic war soldiers to play with my Sylvanian families. I was never one to let a gender bias for toys get in the way, especially when the gene stealers could be the enemy attacking my peaceful families, and the Napoleonic soldiers valiantly defending them. I love how Penelope built a world and made it live, and how she befriended Ivan and made him see it as a living thing too. It's how I see my world when I'm writing. It's like a cinema screen in my head. Of course, everyone grows up eventually. Ivan almost makes the mistake of allowing himself to grow old and grow out of his childhood fantasies in the kingdom. I did this myself for a few years before being reintroduced to My Little Pony, Pokemon, and other old favourites through some very good friends who showed me that growing up was inevitable, but growing old was optional. Given how close Ivan and Penelope became, it was inevitable that as teens, romantic feelings would enter the mix. And while this could have led to a closer relationship, had circumstances allowed, instead their mutual connection to the kingdom enabled them to remain friends over distance, and turn the make-believe of childhood into the storytelling of adulthood. Who knows? If this story had been continued, would they have collaborated to become successful authors, comic book writers? The possibilities are endless. But, because of the kingdom, they will always be friends. Join us next time when Carissa Sluss presents their favourite. We love bringing you the best audio fiction week after week, but we can't do it without your support. Your donations pay our authors, our narrators, our servers and our staff. please consider supporting us with a monthly donation through either PayPal or Patreon. You can also review us on iTunes, request us on Spotify, and consider the stories we publish for award consideration. There are lots of ways you can help. Join the discussion on the EA forum, forum.escapeartist.net, or visit us on Twitter @Cast of Wonders. Come and say hello. Cast of Wonders is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and is brought to you by the creative team of editor Marguerite Kenner, assistant editors Alexis Goebel and Catherine Inskip, associate editors Tonya Bezpalko, Alicia Caparaso, Trace Fontiel, William Hake Minor, Andrew K. Ho, Sean Proctor, Ray O, Susie Rodriguez, Carissa Sluss, Emma Smales, Chris Tang, and myself. Our audio producer is Jeremy Carter, and our community manager Danny Daly. Cast of Wonders episodes are released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International license. You can share the episode, but you can't change it or sell it. Our theme music is Appeal to Heavens by Alexei Nov, available from Promo DJ or his Facebook page. Thanks for listening.